Elspeth Von Draken, possibly my favourite new Empire Lord, although Karl does play even better now and Gelt's a lot of fun. Honestly, they're all just great now, there's so much to do with the Empire, but today we are focusing on Elspeth Von Draken. Her start is a bit slower and a bit more difficult than a lot of players give credit for. Yes, she is supremely powerful in the late game, but getting her there is honestly just as much of a diplomatic mission as it is a gunpowder and military one. So grab your gunpowder, buckle in, because we are going to go through the top 10 tips I have for surviving the early game diplomatically, as well as how to fight in the battlefield, navigate and prioritize the right skills and research, defeat your biggest enemies, and top it off by the perfect first 10 turns in this game. Let's jump in. So first point, and possibly the most important, is that diplomacy is still number one. Yes, gunpowder can deal with a lot of problems, but reducing the problems you have to allow you to beeline for the biggest threats of the day is what this campaign is all about. Vlad should be on the tip of your tongue, because he is the thing you need to destroy as quickly as possible. You have threats from Vlad in the east, you have Scrag the Slaughter in the south, as well as a really careful and really delicate diplomatic situation here in that you have the Wood Elves as well as Clan Angren, and this is the most difficult one you sometimes have to manage, because as you can see, they can both get quite strong. If you manage to stay in the middle for long enough, they will eventually like each other by virtue of the fact they have the same enemies, i.e. Skaven and Greenskins, which will attack them both, and over time they'll learn to coexist. And whilst this isn't the most amazing campaign, I've gone balls to the wall with it to really show just how well a stable diplomatic front can actually be. We have Kislev, they love us. We have Clan Angren, they love us. We've got some wars going on here, but that's so far away. The Wood Elves are relatively buddy-buddy with Clan Angren. I'm not in any military alliances with them, but I'm on great terms with them, so they won't pull me into that. Now, point number two is the north. As you can see, we've already confederated Reichland, but in the early game, don't worry about the north. Allow Karl Franz to deal with this. Wait until you've eliminated Vlad completely, and Scrag the Slaughter, he'll probably attack you when you are most vulnerable, but he's at least been beaten. Peace out with him if you need, and then focus north and just help what's left of the Empire. I haven't seen Karl die yet, but if he needs, just throw some gold at him, he'll build some more armies and defend himself. But keep your military down here where it's needed. As soon as you break to this mountain range here, you have dwarfs. They will trade with you and be your friends. You have Kislev up here. They will trade and be your friends. Once you've created this frontier of allies, dwarfs, wood elves, you have nothing to worry about. Tip 3, I know I keep hammering on about it, make sure you are nice to dirt through, and if this is near zero, under 10 or near zero, and degrading, just give them a small gift. If it's 600 gold, in my mind, it is worth it. If they declare war on you, it is the worst thing that can possibly happen to you. You can be out here crusading in any direction, and they can just underway here and just trash. And these are your capital territories. This is where you do your recruiting and have your economic hub. You cannot afford to be backdoored by them here, so keep them on side, because if you do go to war, wait until you've already got entrance and access to the forests and go in there once you're ready. Next point, I've just loaded up another game to demonstrate Scrag and the South, because it's a little bit different. So we're around turn 24 now. Just be aware, around here you will have upgraded your capital to tier 3. Make sure that new building is a livery, i.e. the stable line, because that will unlock the quest chain to get Theodore Bruckner, an excellent legendary hero. This is a continuation from the walkthrough later. It didn't happen our first time, but sometimes you will be attacked, or quite often, by Scrag the Slaughterer in the south, and he will often catch you with your pants down whilst you're venturing out to the east, which we'll get to, but focusing now. Whatever does happen, you might need to retake some territory, but that's okay. In the early game, don't worry about venturing down, and if you do, make Ankendorf your last holding here. It's a fortified fortress, it has good climate, and it doesn't overexpose you to areas where there's mountains where you can be outmaneuvered, and keeps you where you should be strong. It's an extra line of defense through to the more squishy interior here, so you might lose these two settlements, but that's okay. We just lost them before, we retook them. If that does happen in each of your territories, hire a new lord with a few infantry troops, with a few handgunners, and then make yourselves a couple of full stacks, and then just beat down on them. As soon as you defeat that first army, or even their second army, they will have nothing else, and you'll be able to push them back, and allows you to focus on removing Vlad von Carstein, which we've done here. We've beaten Scrag drag a few times and he's willing to surrender now. Next point is skills and research, and which ones you should prioritize. There's a whole new currency, which is your schematics, as well as the regular research, and of course your gunnery. Now, I know I keep saying it, but this should be the first technology you get with every single Empire faction. This is regular Bob and Harry who have just had some basic training. They need more training, more research, and a good leader to make them really function as professionals. This is an excellent first stop, plus 4 melee attack and defense on every infantryman will really help hold the line. Now, particularly because you're fighting vampires, your troops will be surrounded on all fronts by zombies, and that melee defense will get an absolute bollocking. They just need to stand there for long enough for that gunpowder to take effect. Next step should be state issued armory, an extra 15 armor and 10% missile resist on all of your units. The most tempting after this is to get trained marksmen. I've only actually just got these in this campaign. Instead, I opted to get casualty replenishment and a bit more growth, as well as extra campaign movement. These will honestly benefit you more than bolstering those gunpowder units this early, because they honestly do well enough. The Imperial Gunnery School is where Nuln have their unique goodies, and these are very, very good. Of course, whenever possible, this should always get the priority, making your basic riflemen shoot that much harder, but please look at this one as well. This will allow your missile cav to be able to kite away wolves, Fellbats, these units that are really great at harassing missile units like yours, and honestly, as soon as your units get tied up and they can't shoot, you are really, really badly hamstrung. So sending out Pistoliers first to harass and gun down the wolves and the bats is very useful, and 15% speed will make sure they stay in front. Mortars are also an excellent tool versus vampires. As soon as you get your gunnery up to tier 2, you can get mortars, and against the vampires you need at least 2 artillery units in my mind. Mortars offer excellent range of effect damage, which will help plow through those hordes of zombies and skeletons, so extra blast radius very useful. Most of all, when doing sieges, the Hellstorm rocket battery gets extra missiles every single time you upgrade it. So if you want to make an army purely out of gunpowder units, you absolutely can now. The land ship will also give you some extra pushing power on the front if you go that way, and your outriders have insane range. The Hellstorm rocket batteries literally drop bombardments of dark energy, and amethyst units firing death magic means you're doing excellent damage to demons, so by the time you get this, you'll be well and truly stocked to head north and just tear through their physical resistance. Holding Alt and shooting will allow you to fire your missiles and volley into a blank direction. Enemy soldiers will get quite confused because the missiles aren't going right at them, and they'll often run straight into the barrage. Just remember, don't leave them shooting at nothing for too long, but as soon as their units become engaged with yours, it is very useful to just manually shoot at the edge of the formation, at the edge of their units, so there's little friendly fire on yours, or as little as possible. A battle that is absolutely clutch can be blown to pieces literally by one stray mortar shot hitting that unit of troops, and then they just break and the battle is over. So be careful with this, manually fire at the edge of their blobs and you'll do a lot more damage, a lot more safely. As for Elspeth, her first 3 points must be in Pistol Corps, so your research bolsters your infantry to hold the line better. Her skills need to focus on the handgun and rifle based units, and this is absolutely key because the extra ammunition will help you win those long siege battles, and the damage is how you'll take out those vampire lords. After this, 1 point in Empire's Finest really does help, an extra 4 melee defense to hold the line, and then max out those artillery units for even more ammunition and pain. Work your way along your spell line. Spirit Leech is pretty much your main damage dealer, and you should be unleashing that on enemy lords and characters as much as possible, but do not forget Soul Blight. This will degrade the enemy armor and make your bullets do even more damage. Get that as soon as you hit level 12, and then Graveyard Rose for a bit more replenishment and most of all, regeneration. This will help her go from battle to battle, which the vampires might make you do. She can reduce the cost of gunnery units in all armies as well as her own upkeep, really reduce the cost of Law of Death spells, particularly once you get to Purple Sun, with a special ability to cast it for next to nothing. Nuln's other main ability is the Gardens of Moor, and this allows you to build an outpost or undercity against any settlement that you or an ally have controlled. When you start the game, Averland will have control of Grenstadt, and this is where you should build your first, and honestly the only one that you actually do need in the entire campaign, but this will allow you a unique set of buildings. Later in the campaign, use this to bolster your capacity of wizards and then build a college at another main capital so you can use this increased capacity over there so you can just get more than just death wizards. But the one you want to prioritize early on is this, the Militia of Moor. gaining cheaper armies, but most of all these units, halberdiers, Empire Knights, and of course, most of all, mortars. Very useful to recruit these on the go. Once you start throwing down with Vlad, you'll need a barracks somewhere, you'll need other units just to keep these armies going in some cases, because sometimes you might lose one. This really does help you keep the momentum going. Now doing the tips for the east, I had to fight Vlad. This is just the example I have here, but I'm going to show you how to scout. If you don't know, I call this the 50% rule. Select any character in your army and move them out to where they will have, watch their movement here, where they will have, say, 50% less. Just say this is uncovered territory, which it kind of is, so we can move out 50%, expand that line of sight, and nothing's there. If we saw an enemy, we might want to move up, say, in here where we've got good ambush percent chance, and then hop into ambush stance, then return the character into the army. In other cases, we could move up all the way, but this stops you moving up, running into an ambush of 2 enemy armies with nowhere to go. Now last up, how to equip your characters. There's some really nifty tricks with the Empire to get the most out of them. Now this comes in the form of your ancillaries, i.e. your followers, as well as any banners, but let's just talk about the followers. Always keep an eye when Coachman lands, because this will give you a faction-wide buff to trade. You get so many great ones with the Empire, it's really worth flicking through every now and then and seeing what you can get. When you finish learning a technology, get the student trait by simply ranking up. The same turn you've researched the technology, quite easy to do, but make sure they're equipped. Very easy to find these that aren't equipped. Here are some cool combinations you can do whilst you're taking over the vampires. Once you take over the Mut on the way to killing Vlad, it's going to be quite corrupted, so you can stack Light College Acolyte, very easy to gain by just ranking up with high corruption. That's -3. Combine that with Zealot, and this is -6 corruption, which will help you stabilize the region. The cool thing about that is if you do it in the Mut, you have a chance of gaining this. If you do journey south and have to fight Skaven, this will really help. The most staple combination you should put on any Lord, and it's so easy to do, just win 3 or more battles, or just win any battle at all, you will gain Messenger and Scribe, so +6 and +8 campaign movement, and this of course stacks with the +5 you'll get from Route Marcher. You can amplify this further with your basic engineers, who can increase your campaign movement as so. Because of this mountain range here, scouting ahead can be absolutely critical, making sure that you can beeline to Castle Drakenhof when possible, and then take Castle Tempelhof. Once you've taken these 2 main centers, you've probably killed their armies with most of their heroes, and it's all downhill from there. But how else do you beat the vampires on the battlefield? Well, I'm going to show you some tips. First of all, send your pistoliers out. Get 2 pistoliers in your main army, send them out to bait the bats and bait the wolves into your army. Shoot them to pieces, and now they can't flank you, and tie your key gun units down. Next up, manually fire by holding Alt and right clicking with your artillery pieces once the enemy are close and engaged, over the heads of your troops and safely into a thick blob, and not straight into your units. Next answer is engineers. Engineers have an excellent high armor piercing gun, very good for sniping down enemy lords and characters. Taking down their characters is the hardest thing, so do not discount these guys and make sure they're aiming at high value targets like Graveguard, Crypt Ghouls, and of course their characters. Now, how do you kill those characters? You kill them with abilities. Do not overlook Accusation. It's a very quick and early skill that is obtained by your Witch Hunter. Most of all, it reduces all of their defenses and their armor by 30, meaning that if you're focus firing on a character, they are way more likely to die. Once you're focused on them, just cast Spirit Leech, every direct damage thing you can do to them. And then of course, casting Soul Blight will also stack with Accusation, allowing you to peel away even more of their armor. This can be incredibly difficult because just the way the AI targets. Now the best way to do it is if you see an enemy character, all your guns are pointed towards them, but sometimes they don't shoot. Get the unit engaged with the enemy character and pull them away. Kite them around with one of your units, and when they're in the open and unexposed, your gun units don't want to shoot any of their mates, but as soon as there's a clear shot, they will start ravaging them. Pile those debuffs on and just shoot the shit out of them until they die. Don't take any chances because they will heal and frustrate you. Focus on those single entities when you do have a chance. Additionally, early on, try to get a second general. I'm quite partial to the Empire General on the Imperial Griffin. I think it's badass, and I tend to focus on his melee line just to give you an extra heavy hitter that can reinforce Turn 1 of a brand new legendary campaign, join your hero and attack your first army. Now you can see this entire playthrough in long form, go to complete the entire campaign in a single stream, but today we're going to be running through it so you can get these initial turns quite quickly. You can auto-resolve the very first fight on legendary difficulty and just make sure you get the replenishment and then select your character and attack the settlement again. Also, you can auto-resolve this one on any difficulty, you'll have the time to heal up, and of course always occupy, don't sack, don't raise, do nothing, just occupy. We want these settlements to become stable. Now a powerful campaign usually comes from having lots of powerful heroes, not so many go broke, but we want a priest for a bit of line holding as well as the replenishment. We'll upgrade your gunnery building. This will allow you to get a witch hunter, another excellent hero. They used to be bad, they're now pretty good. And as for Elspeth's army, we're going to hire 2 pistoliers. Pistoliers are very useful because they're fast, can run ahead, and they can shoot down fellbats and other things that would harass your formation. Now winning those first battles will give you enough equipment to do your first upgrade at the Imperial Gunnery School. Of course we want to upgrade our gunnery infantry. An extra 10% missile strength is very useful in the early game. You've also unlocked this piece of equipment from doing that, which you should place on your engineer, give him a nice early game buff. As for your leveling him up, you want to increase your mobility, usually increase his firepower, but of course the first thing you want to do as soon as you can, get Master Ballistics at level 8 and then max this out to get your missile strength up to 12%, and you can even duplicate this benefit with another engineer if you so choose. We will get Route Marcher, but not yet. We have a couple of hard battles, so instead we will increase our pistol corps because of our missile units. This is what will carry you through. This is your focus. So with Karl Franz and other lords, I often put a point in here because that's a great way to hold the line. We are all out offense and range when it comes to Elspeth. That being said, going for our technology, I always go for state issued weapons. This will give you +4 melee defense and melee attack on all your basic infantry, so every garrison and every troop you hire will gain this benefit. Yes, it is tempting to get these benefits here in the missiles, but we will get those soon enough, but just trust me, the Empire infantry need a bit of a buff because they're not really a fully fledged force. They're man of arms and we need to make them great. They don't start great. It's like the whole tale of humanity. Throughout the entire campaign, you must become great. Now just quickly check your quick deals, see what you can get, and it's always good if you're fortunate enough to sign something with Karl Franz nice and early. Get every single cent because he can certainly afford it. Same with Sterling, getting those trade agreements will get you some early cash flow. Turn 2, and this battle you will have to do yourself on the battlefield. It's not hard, but it's one you'll need a little bit of care. And on the battlefield you are using artillery, which does need line of sight in the event of the cannon, and just keep in mind when you put your units down they might not be able to see, so it is quite important. You might think I need as much distance between me and them as possible, and that is somewhat true, but you also need to have a good line of sight, and that is more important. So feel free to take a moment to scour the battlefield, to choose the most opportune position to set up your army, as well as without any line of sight obstructions. I think this is as good a place as any, so we start off by placing our artillery. I don't mind if the cannons are not in a straight line, but your Hellstorm rocket batteries absolutely need to be stretched out to get that nice saturation. So in front of them we'll place our gun units, and around them, forming a perimeter, we've got a couple of injured units, so we'll keep them at the back, designed to stop ourselves from getting flanked, and then place our units around. Quite similar to what we do. Everyone knows I like a 3-unit front line. That predominantly holds the fort back. And last of all, almost most importantly, we have our pistoliers, and we're about to see how useful they can be. Just at the front of the formation, place your 2 heroes, and eventually this engineer will have some nice area of effect buffs for the range units, and we'll want them a little bit further back to run them forward. But for now, he's just going to be a great line holder to just allow us to shred a lot of units. And let's just move this front line unit a little bit further back so that we get a nice spray of here. So there's a reason people love gunpowder in Total War, because it is fun. It is so satisfying because you can volley over anything and score shots with rockets and arrows, but gunpowder shots are always earned and they're very satisfying. So we are going to bait out their most mobile units, which are these bats. Probably not the best use of our Hellstorm rocket battery, so we're going to retarget them towards some of those infantry, but we now need to move our units back. I like to do this. You see that I'm stretching the formation. It always makes the units run, which I do like, but we can also choose if we're going to go wide and bring our units forward, and we're getting some nice easy shots on these bats. And these are such a threatening unit. They've got very high melee defense. They're very hard for our units to catch, especially if they're poor melee combatants like our gunpowder units are. Okay, we've also baited out the direwolves, another underrated unit. Oh my gosh, they've absolutely hammered one of our units, but that's okay. We want them to be taken care of before the rest of the army comes in. If you can, feel free to stretch out your pistoliers to get shots in the back of any enemies that are already engaged. There we are, all good. So hold Alt and Control to tilt any unit, very useful for pre-positioning your gunpowder units. You can change target. These guys have been really slowed down because they've been trying to avoid all the heavy gunfire that's coming towards them. Great stuff. Now this is where your cavalry can be a really useful asset to you. We can use them to harass and manipulate the enemy ranks. We can crowd the enemy with them. We can even stretch the enemy out and string them along. Just be careful of the enemy rockets, and just remember these are Hellstorm rocket batteries, very devastating to the enemy at range, but they can hurt you up close. Just keep an eye on things. So Elspeth is in melee combat right now. Let's use Dark Walker to give her 40% resistance to all physical damage, and this one unit now, we're just holding Alt to make sure she melee attacks and pins them in place, and she is getting a lot of opportunity for these gunpowder units. Cool. Now that they're getting in range, we'll pull back. I'm going to stretch these spearmen out so the enemy can't flank us. Keeping an eye on all of our units. Okay, we've got a nice shot here to the flank of these units. I'm going to take that. Let's use Spirit Leech on their Lord. So save your magic for using Spirit Leech on their Lord. And this is why I hotkey my Lords and casters number 1 and 2. In this case, Elspeth performs both roles, and we're just able to very quickly keep on dumping down Spirit Leech, direct damage. We have these zombies chasing after our horses, so instead of engaging them, let's run to the back and get some shots in the rear. And it's all about ensuring that you don't get flanked. If you can keep this this formation open and not get flanked by the wolves, but the wolves and the bats, take them out nice and early and you shouldn't have too much trouble. Using our engineer to help snipe the Lord, and that army is broken apart, and that is victory. Post-battle, occupy of course, and then hire 2 Free Company militia. They have a bit more melee attack and melee defense, so they are a good front line, but they also gain the same buffs from being gunpowder units. Turn 3, your gunnery building is complete, which means you can hire handgunners. Get 3 of them, and now we have nearly finished our stack, so we can switch this edict back to the growth edict. Turn 5, first piece of research is complete, which will give us a little bit more leadership and speed on our infantry, which we'll need, and then of course state issued weapons. From here you can get state issued armor, and will also protect your ranged units, including your gun units. Don't forget grain silos, also very useful. Now both of your hero buildings are constructed, so let's get 2 heroes. Get the best traits you possibly can. Noble is quite nice and will make your local construction a bit cheaper, and then the same philosophy roughly with the Witch Hunter, something like this that makes them tougher. Now we have to hide the priest. Let's knock this down. Now let's take our first major enemy out, and this isn't a hard fight, but it's a long one. And on the battlefield, again, this battle is longer, it's not necessarily hard. Just throw all of your army hard up against this side here, and I'm going to show you how to use both of your artillery pieces and why they're both uniquely special. Start off with our cannon, and most of all, turn your army off fire at will. We're going to preserve our ammo and then switch it on when it's showtime. So first of all, we need to take out these towers, and they don't have any range units of their own. If you can take out their towers, you've basically neutered them and you can systematically take them apart. It's just about being smart and being patient. Whilst the cannon is nowhere near as useful, it is good for blowing holes through walls and of course knocking down towers. So knocking down the 2 nearest towers is their first port of call, then blow 2 holes in the actual walls themselves. You'll be firing in between these gaps with your gun units. Now the fun of manual volleys with the Hellstorm rocket battery. Hold Alt and then right click wherever you would like to manually fire. Usually a unit that's not cavalry or something that's not too mobile. You'll find they'll scurry around trying to avoid the shot, but often they will find themselves getting hit by the odd stray missile. Also, if they're on a barricade, they are far more restricted and you will blow the crap out of them and the barricade. But most of all, if you can, target valuable units, target Graveguard and Black Knights if they're not running away, and of course Crypt Ghouls. Your infantry will beat theirs if it's one-on-one. However, those heavy units, they are where the balance of power lie. You'll notice their Fellbats will fly towards you at some point, just gun them down, make sure they don't get near your artillery, and of course by now you've moved all your units down because there's no towers to fire back, and they're vampires, they don't have bows, so you're relatively safe. Just try to avoid any unnecessary tower fire on your units. Just always keep one eye on that Hellstorm's ammunition. Once it gets to halfway through, be very selective. Of course, start this battle with fire at will turned off on all of your units. You want to manually fire everything, and then once you're in range, switch your gun units onto fire at will. Eventually their lord will wander your way. Keep on casting Spirit Leech with Elspeth and just drain his life down. If he does wander out stupidly like he does here, just gun him down, and this will really help the balance of power swing in your favour. Once without their lord, the undead become significantly weaker. To get shots through the gaps, you might need to make your formations much more skinny columns, and this will maximise the line of sight, and it gets around some of the derpy pathfinding issues. Notice how the skinny unit's able to shoot through the gap whilst the wider one struggles a little bit more. With the lord dead, you can now prioritise Elspeth's limited wins on the valuable units. The Crypt Ghouls, and most of all the Graveguard, will give you the most trouble, so cast your magic on them. You don't want to be fighting any of these guys in melee. However, you can use the doorway itself to protect your units. Now if you right click on the doorway, he'll run onto the top, but if we move him away facing the right way, left click and hold Alt, and you can now push him underneath the gateway, keeping him relatively safe, and your engineer can now fire freely. As the battle rages on, always keep a melee unit close to the fence to catch anyone that charges out, and just keep firing that gunpowder into the flanks of the enemy. Once there's no more armor-piercing enemies, you can send Elspeth into melee and just keep on casting Spirit Leech until they eventually crumble. Take your time, shoot manually, and you should be rewarded with victory. Build weaving houses wherever you can. Lots of tier 1 weaving houses is where the Empire derives their wealth. Level up your units, and in the Imperial Gunnery, of course, get an extra missile for your Hellstorm rocket battery. Turn 5, now move up to this stack of Savage Orcs and make sure you've joined your heroes after you've moved up in range. Declare war and just do a simple auto-resolve. This battle is a bit trickier on the battlefield, so just take the auto-resolve and move to the edge of your territory so you still get that replenishment. Make sure you get Simulate Growth and of course replenishment on your Warrior Priest and level everyone else up, favouring melee defense. It's a good habit to be in ambush stance and keep yourself near some trees for protection. Build the gunnery building. This will give you access to mortars and get you closer to tier 2 amethyst units. Start whatever you can with Karl Franz and make sure you put that nifty gadget on your engineer. Turn 6, get out of ambush stance and attack the fortress. Now this is your main hurdle before you start fighting Vlad, and the idea is we need to take this with as few losses as possible. On easy or normal, just auto resolve it, but if you're on the harder difficulties, just do the basically same method as before. Blow down the towers and blow holes through the walls. Don't get too close because their archers can volley over and actually hit your missile units. This is why we put our research in some extra missile defense for them, but you'll notice if you stand back they'll take a lot of shots at the units on top of the walls, but because of the shape of the walls, they'll miss a lot of them. Sometimes it's best off switching them off fire at will and just preserving their ammunition until there's some holes in the wall. As you can see now, they have very easy time shooting between those gaps. But most of all, you could almost win an easy fight like this with your Hellstorm rocket batteries alone, and the units up here are just to bait them a bit closer, and as you can see, manually firing and lobbing shots where we think they will be, we just blast them to pieces, and we can do so without taking any losses. Turn 7, the goblins will either be stationed at their remaining settlement or they'll venture an army out like you see here. Either way, take Elspeth's army and put it into ambush stance just north of the forest. You'll see there's a great spot there that provides excellent ambush defense. It'll almost certainly hold, so the following turn they'll be wandering out and be left vulnerable for you to attack, but just in case, we build a Garden of Moor at Grenstadt. This is an important settlement. Currently it's owned by Avaland, or you'll be able to teleport here later in case you get attacked by Scrag, but build the recruitment building here and this will allow excellent units like handgunners, Empire Knights, and even halberdiers. Turn 8 and Carrick Norn are dead, and that is why we do not side with them. It just would have annoyed Durthu. You do not want angry Wood Elves. Don't break your initial treaties with Carrick Norn, but don't sign any others. And if you need to throw a gift at him if that relationship's declining, absolutely do that. Now, you probably won't have a loose goblin army running through your empire like I did, but this is actually a good thing if it does happen, because this army is isolated and you can easily destroy it like we do right here. Regardless, what you want to do is at your Garden of Moor, hire a brand new lord, a couple of mortars, a handgunner, and some engineers have excellent traits that bolster the whole army, but arguably above all else you need some line holding, so select a general with the best defensive traits. Turn 9, upgrade those buildings, get of course the resource building, and if you want to fast track to the good stuff you can get a growth building, or if you're short of cash just build a weaving house. Move Elspeth up in ambush stance so she can still retreat back if needed, and bring your secondary general up. Now I've only hired one unit here because we destroyed the main army, but if they still have an army next to a full garrison, definitely get those 4 units with that original lord. If you're really scared you could hire more, but you should be fine and can hide in ambush stance along the riverside. Sign everything you can with Evelyn. If things get tough for him, you'll be able to confederate. Turn 10, it's time to finish off those goblins. In range to reinforce and then attack with Elspeth, you should pull out their garrison and completely destroy them. Now turn 11, it's time to move on to the vampires, the biggest threat of the day. March towards the mud. You may see a vampire army, you may not, but always send a scout over first, less than 50% range, and you can always return it back to your army. Upgrade your mortars to increase their explosiveness, because this will be your main way of clearing chaff in the upcoming vampire wars. Turn 12, it's time to take the fight to Vlad. We have the opportunity to take out his main army and we're going to take it. Just be very careful and make sure you can reinforce with the second army, because this is the most challenging it will get, because he has the most heroes as well as Graveguard and some other tough enemies in your army which counter you quite hard. So as usual, the first move is to move the Pistoliers up the battlefield, mainly to bait the direwolves and the bats your way. None of their units can be allowed to disrupt your firing. If you can bring any heroes over, just like you've seen here, you can isolate them and then blast them to pieces. Note that you won't really get clear shots if one of your units is in range, so you basically want to hold them still, then run your unit away, and then your gun units will have the confidence to fire freely. Setting up your formations is a bit of an art form. You need to make sure that those gunpowder units have line of sight, but at the same time you don't want to be flanked or overrun. So this is what we're doing. You see, we're taking really clear shots, baiting the units towards us and getting nice clear shots. Don't just leave them to stand and guess. Select those gunpowder units and force them to have a target. Make sure that they stay down, because vampires love to heal. Chariots of terrible field formations that can just bowl you over, so if this does happen, stay calm. Bats, make sure you shoot them. Don't fight the melee, just shoot them, because their melee defense is very good. And just use Elspeth to keep on casting relentlessly Spirit Leech, targeting one unit at a time until it's gone. Done properly, you should be able to kill most of their single entities before they even come close. Vlad will always be on foot, so he'll be the last one to the party. If you can eliminate all the other single entities before he arrives, you've done half the battle. Of course, completely kill the characters, but as for their regular units, once you can see they're crumbling, stop targeting them. They're falling apart, you don't need to waste your ammo, focus on something else, ideally their characters. Line up a shot, free them up, even use Elspeth, cast her physical resistance, buy your gunpowder units enough time to turn and face, line up their shots, and then pull away. If she's getting beat up, send a unit of spears to hold him still. Again, use this time to line up your gunpowder units to get clean shots. Keep on casting Spirit Leech, and then eventually you'll get him in the open. Focus fire, and he will eventually go down, but oh my god, it is hell to kill this guy. Now, we could have made this a little bit easier by casting Soul Blight, as well as the accusation ability from a Witch Hunter to drop his armor collectively by 60. Note the Law of Metal can also achieve this. So just to reiterate, the most important thing when fighting undead is if you're killing their zombies or hordes, just get them down to probably less than 10% health, notice the status by hovering over, and if it says crumbling, just change target. Do not waste your arrows trying to kill those last 10 or so units, because they're going to crumble apart anyway. Focus on a larger cluster of units, but more importantly, just remember that a lot of those zombies can't hurt your units as long as you've invested in them. Focus on the heroes and focus on the characters. Allow yourself those shots. Gunpowder isn't so good at hordes, but it's very good at concentrating on single entities. Once you win this battle, you'll be able to curb their healing cap as well as gain regeneration on Elspeth. Over the end turn, we've been forced to have to pay tribute to Scrag or heal attack. Absolutely pay this. Never be shy to pay tribute if it's not the right time for you to fight. These extra few turns will allow you to cripple Vlad, if not destroy him, and then get on the front foot to counter him. Now, sometimes you might get counter-attacked and have a really impossible battle. This is how you deal with that. If you want to cheese in corner camp, this is how you do it. Have a checkerboard formation allowing your gunpowder units to fire through the gaps, artillery down the back, holding the line with those stout warriors, which you should have invested some research into. Just remember, hold Alt and right click at the edge, as you see here, at the edge of their formation, so any shots that scatter will still go deep into their formation. Some might miss, but it's way better than blasting your own troops because there's a fearless. And that is how to do the first 10 turns, as well as some tips for the rest of the Elspeth campaign. Please recommend what you would like to see next. Do you like these videos being joined together as a single unit, or would you like to see them in two parts, the walkthrough as well as the top 10 tips? Let me know. This is Elvin, I'll see you next time.